Kum Lernen Ablak Gemara. We are up to Daf Chav Ches Amad Aleph Masechet Nedarim, the Gemara. So in the Mishnah we learned another example of, I'm not sure exactly, a machlekes whether with another example of nidrei shegig, a neder that was done, inadvertently, or nidrei ointin, you sort of forced into it. Basically, you swore to somebody who threatened your life or somebody who was going to rob you, and you said, I swear that if I won't eat any more of this particular kind of fruit, if this item you want to steal is truma. And truma they won't steal because it has no value, because they wouldn't eat the truma themselves. So we say that the neder has no meaning whatsoever. And the last example we gave was if the tax collector comes to collect from you and you made the shvua, it's nothing. As to whether this applies to shvua as well or only to nedarim, Bishama is that said against the shvuas because it's a stricter thing. It says lo yanak Hashem will atone you for it. It's only limited to nedarim. Plus, Bishama says that you cannot even offer to make a neder. It's only they request it, and only to what they requested. You have limited to their request. Anything that you add on, any other layers, they have the effectiveness of a neder, efficacy of a neder, and Basil says not true at all. Says the Gemara, tax collector, and we'll come back to that soon. Says the Gemara, tax collector. Well, Shmuel, what do you mean? You're denying paying taxes? Well, Shmuel says dina de malchusa dina. The law of the land, we'll talk about this in a minute, is a law. So in other words, by law, you have by in other words, the halacha is that you have to pay it. How do we allow? First of all, how do we even allow you to worm your way out of it? Let alone to make a false neder. Says Gemara, Abchina says Neino Kana Mishmul b'moiches she'ein lekitcher. Talking about a tax collector that has no cap. Now that is robbery. And that he took it upon himself to collect taxes, and therefore, again, he's not representing the government, and therefore it's geneva. Now, this concept of adina malchus adina, which we have a number of times in Shas, most Rishonim say that nobody argues on this, and this is the halacha accepted adina malchus adina. What exactly is adina malchus adina? The most Rishonim hold it's mahatorah. The Torah tells us you have to follow. Now, this Shmuel's din is very novel because prior to that, whatever religion you were or whatever you were maintained that, and you did not become a loyal citizen of the country. Dafka the Yidden are always being accused that we're not loyal citizens over the years, and why we were evicted from different countries. After we have in our doctrine that if you live in a certain country, you have to follow the laws of the land. But as the Rishonim point out, it says Dina de Malchusa, it doesn't say Dina de Malka. Dina de Malchusa means the government. And this is important because, first of all, what's the basis of Dina de Malchusa? Why taka do you have to listen to the Malchus? Especially if you hold it about Torah, where does the Torah say so? And what do you have to follow it? So if you ever have a chance to look at Dvar Avram, the very first Chelik Aleph, Simon Aleph goes through the Ben Yenya there, Eliezer Ben Yenya, and others goes through the whole thing of plays very nicely. But anyway, in a nutshell, by those who say that Din Malchus Din because it says that you have to follow Dinin. The Goyim and Bnei Noach also have to follow the laws, and 7 mitzvahs Bnei Noach, one of them is Dinin. So therefore, since the Torah says that they have to follow laws, then we are bound by those laws as well. That's what Din Malchus Din is. If you follow that line of reasoning, then Din Malchus is not limited just to taxes that you pay to the government, but the laws as well that are interactive between people. Commercial laws of the courts are also under Din Malchus Din. However, there's another hezbollah which I'll limit you around in a second because it's fascinating. There's another hezbollah that Din Malchus Din comes from the laws of a king. It says in Pasha Shaftim that the king can do these things, and the big machlekes Gemara will have in Sanhedrin. If all these things that Shmuel and Navi warned them, this is what a king will do. He tried to make them realize what it means having a monarch. All those things is Melech Mutaboy, or just intimidating them so that they shouldn't proceed, pursue that line, but not because the king is allowed to. If you hold the king is allowed to, then a goyish government is just like a king, and therefore they can do all those things, take your field away, all those things it says over there, they can do. So therefore, that's where it comes from. Melech Mutaboy, it comes from the laws of a king. Now, if you follow that line of reasoning, then Din Malchus Din starts out by Yidden, and we extrapolate from that, and we transfer over to Goyim. But the Ran says it's just the opposite. Fascinating Ran. He quotes a Taisus. If you look on the left side here, it says the Moiches Ha'oimed Me'elav, the second line. The Ran says here, learn it inside because this is very important. Because of the Taisus, says Taisus, Davke b'malke oive kachavim amad Din Malchus Din. Malchus Din only applies if you live in Australia, but not in Israel. Now, what's the logic in that? So he is a third logic for the basis for Din Malchus Din, and that is Ibnei Sha'aret Shalai. You know what the basis of Malchus Din is? If the king wants, they can evict you, and because they can evict you, then you are a humble guest in their place, and you have to follow all their rules. Simple as that. So if so, Where do they have a right to evict you? Only chutzlaritz. It belongs to the government. If you don't follow my rules, I got to just another. Like in Australia, they can forcibly buy your property. They might have to compensate you as irrelevant. They can forcibly buy your property. But in Israel, the government can never throw any Jew out. Every Jew owns a Shevet Yisrael. And this is the argument one of the arguments is the Rebbe talk about the Koch Nefesh. And others say why Israel has no right to give back any land to the Irish, because it's not theirs. It does not belong to the government. It belongs to every single Jew. And no one has the right to give it back. And then he goes a little bit further. And the when we say you know what Din is? Only paying taxes. And if somebody in those days, the government used to sell the rights to somebody, he would pay, let's say, 80 cents to the dollar, and then he goes collect it and he gets the rest. But on the other hand, if it's a commercial law, there's no din of malchus dinner there. Others disagree. A fourth reason din malchus dinner is the din of kaivish, because they conquer a land just like they conquered this land. Another reason, number 5, is because it's as if we accepted, we moved into this house, we moved into this country, that we're going to follow all these laws. And the famous Shach, Simonayim Gimel Simchat Lamates, basically says that even though Dinah Machos Dinah, it's Mahatayra, and if you want to hold commercial law, but not where it contravenes our Torah law. If any law contravenes, for example, in the Goyish law, an 8 echad, a single 8 is accepted. In our laws, a single 8 is not accepted. You have to have 2 witnesses. Then you don't follow the laws of the Goyim at all. Because where the Torah, otherwise he has the expression. Otherwise, why they should bother give us a Torah in Har Sinai? Just follow the laws of every country you're in. No such thing. Anyway, so that's Dinah the Malchusa Dinah. Bottom line is, but everyone agrees you're not allowed to avoid paying taxes. You have to pay tax. But let me read you something else. There was a part that wasn't around for a long time. It was just revealed now because it came out in the censor. So I'm going to show you where the censor pulled out, and it changes everything around. If you look if you have a Gemara on the very bottom of the page, for those Gemaras that have the censors, if you don't have it, I'll tell you what it says there. It took out of the round. This is the censor. It didn't like what the round said here. And the round said here that if a Jew buys the right to collect taxes, he has no right to coerce. He can go collect from another Jew, but he cannot force them. You cannot force them. You can only invoke and say, "Oh, the king, the government will go after you," but he himself cannot force them. Why? And I'll quote you this line here. Nihi the dinner the malchusa dinner. True. Dinner the malchusa dinner. What? I owe the money to the government. Lo yehei ela halva asim. It's as if it's a loan that I owe to the government. Hakaimalan. The rule is a perek hagoizel, which we learn of Gimel, have cross halva asay muteres. You're not allowed to steal, but if you don't pay back a loan, by us we have a rule. Remember, we had the Gemara in the pays and ksuvas that priyas b'alchayv mitzvah. We don't have that mitzvah to pay it back to goyim. So have course halva asay muteres. But basically, what he's saying here, it changes everything twists everything in his head. It means that you have a monetary obligation, like any other loan. So if the trader recognizes it's a loan I owe to a guy, and if you don't pay the guy, as long as there's no chil Hashem, which is what the other Rishonim add in here, not chil Hashem, everything else, you're not really breaching a din in the Torah, which you can see why the censor pulled it out. Okay, let's continue. Says the Gemara, he also said, he said that this produce here belongs to the government. So, hey, what exactly did you say? But this is what you said. So right now it says that I swear this is based on, I make a net, this is based on milk. What does that even mean? Oh, this is what you say. You also pay I will not eat any more fruits. If this is not from the base of melech, if this is what you want to steal, does not belong to the government, then I won't eat any more fruits. Even the Amar, so you might ask a question. Even the Amar Yasru, the moment you said that I'm going to answer all fruits, you said I will not eat any fruits. If this is the government, the moment you said that, it's already asr for you all the fruits. So even though in your heart of hearts you were thinking about that it's not true, but this is what your lips said. And remember, unless it's muchach, it's clear what you're trying to say. Here, why is it clear you're trying to say? When I answered, you said, I will not eat today any fruits in the world if this is the government. So that, Taki, you won't eat today. So he hears you make a, what do you think, stupid? If he hears you saying, I make a neder that today I won't eat any fruits in the world if this is not based on melech, They know you can, one day you can avoid eating fruit, so they're not going to trust you. Your whole idea is you're trying to get them to trust you. So the Gemara, but even believe by Hayay. The Chiddush doesn't follow. This is what happens. They say, give us that the basket over there. And you say, I swear that if I will not eat any fruits, you don't limit it to today, but nor do you add the word la'olam, I will not eat any fruits, if this doesn't belong to the government. And you have in mind Hayay. Now, if you would have said la'olam, even having in mind Hayayim, your thinking cannot contradict your words. When you say stam, I won't eat fruits, you don't give it a time limit. It could be a day, it could be a year, it could be forever. Now, generally, you would say it's forever because you didn't give a time limit. Over here, we understand why you didn't give a time limit because you're trying to outsmart these tax collectors. So in this case over here, we're going to say that you're not bound by the neder because we understand as long as your words are not directly conflicting, contradicting what your thoughts are, or vice versa. That's right, exactly right. So now we can define it and we understand under the circumstances, it's like a nidya shoygig, a nidya einus, and therefore we united in that. Study more further. Beishamai says, Beishamai says you're only limited to the nether that you made. It's a limit. Even if you can always add a layer. Kate, something was I Mishnah say. Not sure why the Gemara repeats practically the entire Mishnah. Kate said, I swear that my wife is also to me if these fruits don't belong to the king. That's what they said to him. Swear that your wife won't have any pleasure from you. And he goes for a step further. My wife, my children. Beshame says, as far as your wife is concerned, okay, you had no bread. But a bonav, why did you add that in? Asurim, that nether remains intact because the tax does belong to the king. So therefore, your children can have. But no, you have to be mataneder. Well, Beisil says, because you're not thinking straight, and you're the rest, and that's different. Omar and the Braisa we learn differently. In our Gemara here, the question is, Beishamai says you're not allowed to make a shvur at all. And Beisil says, this the circumstance you can't make a shvur just in there. And Beisil says you can even make a shvur. In a Braisa it says, Beishamai says, La yiftach le b'shvur. Beishamai just says that you shouldn't volunteer a shvur. But if they ask you for a shvur, it seems like you can. Not like our Mishnah. You can even volunteer a shvur. It sounds from here, you shouldn't volunteer. You're allowed to volunteer. And so two counts, our Mishnah is different. Our Mishnah says a shvur forget about, and a neder you can volunteer. But now that even a neder you can't volunteer. It seems that's question number one. Question number two. Sounds to me that you're not allowed to volunteer a shvur. Or made another b'shvur, but if they ask you for a shvur, you can. But now you can never make a shvur. I don't care if they ask you, they don't ask you. So you want to turn them. No, there's no difference between the two. So why does the Braisa talk about volunteering? Because the Braisa is out to tell you how far Hillel is being lenient. That Hillel holds that no different than neder shvur, and not only no different than shvur, you're allowed to even volunteer it. So therefore, because the Braisa is talking about the chiddush of Hillel that you're allowed to volunteer it, so he said, but B'Shammai he can't volunteer it. Not that B'Shammai says you're allowed to make a shvur if they ask you for it. He was talking about volunteering to show how far Hillel goes. And our Mishnah is telling you how far B'Shammai goes. Therefore, tell me, you never like you have to go B'Shammai. And the Mishnah talks about that to tell you how far B'Shammai goes, how strict he is. Therefore, he says, that's true, you can't do it at all. And then only a response. The Braisa accents on shvur, accentuating shvur, like the Achad Koich how far Hillel goes to be lenient. Rav Ashi says no. This Braisa is talking about something totally different than our Mishnah. You thought that our Braisa. You thought that our Braisa is here to what do you call it? To augment or to explain our Mishnah. No. Hachitani, the Braisa has a whole different argument. Can you be shoyel or shvur? Beishamai says, "Ain't shoylim shvur under any circumstance. You cannot be. Once you make a shvur, you got to abide by your shvur. You cannot just go ahead and be, shoyel. I want to undo my shvur. You can't do that." And Beisil says, "Yeah, shoyel shvur. You can be shoyel shvur." And Beishamai says it's so strict shvur. We don't want people to be in the habit of making shvurs. Don't release them from their shvur. Now, there's a very interesting Rosh here, a very important shit. The Rosh says over here, in the first answer to the Gemara, the Rosh says, what do you mean our Mishnah is coming to tell you? The Rosh is about six lines into the middle of my lines. Very important Rosh. He says it. But I forgot the other. We have a general rule that we always try to find to focus on the one who's leading. So you tell me our Mishnah is focusing on Beishamai, the one who's being strict. Our Mishnah should be focusing on Hillel to be strict, so lenient. So he says here, Abraise Kosamich. You hear this? The Mishnah left out parts, relying that the Braise will make up the parts. So the Rosh comes to tell you here that which we never knew before, because usually the Mishnah doesn't. The Braise is something like many years later, collected in the Abchir, Abesha, Levi, Bakapora. They made these Braises, put it together later. But now you tell me that the Mishnah Lechatchila, this is how the structure of Mishnah was. That they were very, very cryptic and very brief, and they relied on the Braise to make up things. To the extent that the Mishnah would do the Chumrah because they knew they had to come up in the Braise. So he pointed out that he pointed out that and he just highlights it as well, that this is a big chiddush, and the Mishnah relies on Braises, which we never heard of and unheard of. Okay, next Mishnah. The person says, let me just tell you what the Gemara already says, what we're talking about here, but otherwise it's hard to understand. There was a hurricane going on. The trees were swaying like yesterday in the afternoon. You saw the trees were swaying back and forth, and trees were falling down. And this is a hurricane that you expected your tree to fall down in any moment. So you say, carbon, these trees will be a carbon if they don't fall down. In other words, you expected to fall down. You never expected that you'll have to make it a carbon. Or talazu carbon, or there's a big fire there and you had clothes there and you expected, how do you prevent fires in those days? All these wooden shacks. So you expected your talos to burn any moment. So you say, this talos should be a carbon in the sefer, it's going to get burnt. The din is that, until it gets burnt, or until it gets cut down, they become holy. Yesh le pigeon, but you can redeem them. As we'll say, there's only kedushas dummy. But if you say had an etiyas elu carbon ad sheyiktzatu, if your wording is different, this tree should be a kodesh until it's cut down, or talus of carbon ad shetissa, where this talus should be holy until it gets burned down. Ain't pigeon. That becomes kedushas haguf. There's two kinds of kedusha. Kedusha dummy means I'm making the value. I'm saying the value of this should be dedicated to either the Vedika bias or whatever, kabbanis. And Kedushas Aguf means this very animal itself should become, or this very item itself should become consecrated. Kedushas Aguf cannot be redeemed, Kedushas Damim can. Says the Gemara, so why are you telling me whether it could be paid or not? The Gemara right now understands that when you said that these trees should be a carbon, if it doesn't get cut down, it never doesn't become a carbon at all. Nothing happens. That's why you can be paid. Not because you can be paid. There's no Kedusha at all. Says the Gemara, at least why don't we just say Kaddish or any Kaddish? Tell us whether it's Kaddish or whether it's not Kaddish. So say that's Kaddish or not Kaddish. Kaddish, therefore, you can be paid because it's not really Kaddish. And the one that says you cannot be paid because it is Kaddish. Says the Gemara, I did it by Mr. Sefer England picking translation Yeshlan picking because the Sefer the Chiddush there is that it's Kaddish and you cannot redeem it. It's not Stam Kedusha, it's Kedusha Zaguf. Therefore, it says that as well. Says the Gemara, what exactly was the neder that you said? What exactly was the neder that you said? So the Gemara, what do you mean? If you said, right now the Gemara doesn't know about this wind thing. You say that this thing should become Kaddish if it doesn't get cut down. Every tree eventually dies. There's no tree that's older 1,000 years. The red oaks, whatever it is you have in California, the oldest. You don't find a tree that's older than 1,000 years. Every tree, one day, since you didn't give it a time limit, you said if this tree doesn't get cut down, it should be holy. Every tree eventually is going to die. It will wither, will either fall down or just die. So therefore, how can any tree be Kaddish? Use such a language. So you might say, well, what was that? Was your neder? So the Gemara, what exactly was your neder? Why should it be control? But he said, then it cut down today. And what happened was that day didn't get cut down, so it becomes Kaddish. Obviously, you said that it become holy if it didn't get cut down today. If it didn't get cut down today, there's terrible winds out there. There are terrible winds out there. And because of terrible winds out there, so therefore you thought that you thought that it wouldn't become Kaddish at all. Because you thought definitely the tree will fall down. And the Chiddush is that it does become Kaddish. Well, Tony law, and I'll prove it to you because it says it got by talus. The talus is safe for kaima. Yeah, you can leak it. So by talus, what do you mean? You said the talus will get burned. What do you mean talus get burned? So Navas, what you're trying to say is there's a fire going on, is ravaging all the houses in the neighborhood. So therefore, you expect it to get burnt as well. Same thing by the tree. In a case, we expect it to fall down. So over here, there are very strong winds. What's the chiddush? I thought I was convinced that this tree will definitely fall down. The talzik will burn. If he made neder, he never meant it. The neder is chal. And the T is a carbon. So it says that these netias are a carbon. If you say these netias should be a carbon, till they got sorry.
Trying to picture the scene. This is fire. This big winds and stuff. This is making it.
I guess it feels useless. You said these netias should be a carbon until they get cut down. Right? There's no pig. Says the Gemara. It says there England pigeon. Your condition was until they get cut down. So after they get cut down, they're no longer kodesh. So what do you mean England pigeon? England pigeon sounds like that's it. It's kodesh forevermore. But your wording was Hare England is carbon until they get cut down. So after they cut down, they're all right. So what do you mean England pigeon? What are you saying forever? I'm about Podon. I have an interesting machlekes about Podon. Podon says Podon. The chiddush is Podon chayzreis v'kedoshus. If you redeemed it while it was still upstanding, it'll become kodesh, right? We'll take the money becomes consecrated, but the tree immediately becomes kodesh again. Pardon, because you said that this tree should remain kodesh until it gets cut down. So every time you redeem it, since your promise kicks in again, you say that it becomes holy again. You said it should be kodesh until you cut it down. You didn't cut it down yet. But if you cut it down, then poison pamach. You still have to redeem it, but once it doesn't become holy again. So the chiddush of Apoda is either twofold or onefold. The first part is that a chiddush that you constantly have to recreate it. But if everyone agrees, it's just about part of the chiddush. But the second part of chiddush, he's saying you clearly said ad sheyiktzu. So you would think the moment you cut the tree down, that's it. The kedusha just vanishes. There's no kedusha cannot just vanish. You still have to do something. You have to transfer the kedusha away from that tree to something else. So you still have to redeem it. But this time you redeem it, it's gone forever.
So inline pigeon is just a practical thing because you're redeeming it. It is effective. And now it's back.
Kodesh. So you never really but you didn't really redeem it. What you did was you consecrated the coins and the money as well. You didn't really redeem it. The Ula says, Ula says, once you cut it down, you can no longer, you don't have to redeem anymore. The kedusha disappears. My tonight was achiksu. Once you cut it down, the kedusha disappears. Now, as I told you, machlekes is training if Ula was only arguing at that din or also the first part. Machlekes is Rashba, and the Ran brings another person called Moshe Kartavi. Not sure who that is, but Moshe Kartavi argues with Rashba. He calls him a Chacham HaGadol. So obviously he was equal to the Rashba, and it has ramifications. If somebody says the case has ramifications is if somebody says interesting cases as follows. What is it? What is it? If a guy says, "Go ahead and be kind of this field, and this field should be yours until I go to Yerushalayim." So this field is yours until I go to Yerushalayim, and then the guy the vendor who sold him bought it back before he went to Yerushalayim. So the Rashba, it goes right back again to the buyer because you said to Yerushalayim. It goes back and back and back because he says that everybody agrees to this thing, the first part. And Moshe Katabi says no, that Ula argues and explains how the two halachas are bound together. Ula argues and says no, that I said once you redeem it, it's redeemed. And therefore there was as well. If I bought it back to property, that's it. It's mafsik your connection to the property. Anyway, Rav Nuna says he's asking a question I don't understand. To Ula, kedusha shebehen heichen hocha. Where did the kedusha disappear to? That's a question. If a guy says to a woman, today you're my wife, tomorrow you're not my wife. I told her tomorrow's not my wife. That's it. So we have only for a day, but we had the Rab whenever he traveled, he used to have a wife for a day. That's it. He just left the town and is no longer his wife. Tate already asked, maybe Taka, and he brings a eye from another Gemara that din is no. It doesn't work that way. Me nafkala, we get something here. Once you kodesh, once you chal, that's it. The kedusha just doesn't disappear, even though you made it, on a tonight. Same over here. Once it's kodesh, then the kedusha doesn't disappear. Amalei Rava says, Rava Mika Medamet kedusha damin le kedusha aguf. What are you comparing a woman, kedusha aguf, to kedusha damim? I'll tell you the pshat the Mishnah as follows: that kedusha damim, poker, our Mishnah talking about kedusha damim. Even in both cases, the Mishnah is talking about kedusha damim. You makdish the value of the trees. So therefore, when the kind of time comes to an end, Ula says, "Poker just disappears with nothing." Or the kedushas are goof when it comes to a married woman. This not just stam kedusha damim. You become married to each other, and let poker doesn't just leave azay. You need a get to sever, to end, to terminate that relationship. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow. This is